Yeah.
Okay, konnichiwa, and welcome to another podcast of the NC Rowan County Anime Group. My name is Robert Clyde Allen. I am currently the president of the NC Rowan County Anime Group, and I'd like to welcome you. Please don't stay back there. Come on down. I promise you I won't bite.
Come on, guys.
Come on, guys. Come on down.
Come on down.
Come on
We're not
down.
part of that, sorry. We just haven't left yet.
Okay. Oh, come on. This panel right here is how to review anime through podcasting. First of all, I would like to dedicate this panel to my good friend Brent Newhall of Atako No Video. Brent is an excellent podcaster. I highly recommend him. You can find him on YouTube, and he is very good. Because what Brent does, he takes the seriousness of the subject of trying to talk about anime manga. He also takes the time to talk about how things are set up as far as storytelling. He does an excellent job. So if you, like I said, I highly recommend if you ever do get a chance to go on YouTube, check out a Talk No Video podcast. One of the most important keys of doing podcasting that I feel like is necessary is to keep the subject serious. Now, the late studio Hammer Horror took their stuff serious, like they did a film called Dr. Jekyll and Mrs. Hyde, but yet they kept it serious. They did a movie one time about lesbian vampires called Vampire Lovers. So for Hammer, keeping stuff very serious, or keeping it where there wouldn't insulting somebody, is very important in podcasting. Also, too, it's very well that when you're trying to do a podcast on reviewing of anime, that you know about what the subject is, because what a person would usually hate is somebody going up and they don't know what they're talking about, basically, about the subject they're covering. And that kind of looks kind of foolish when you're trying to impress people on your knowledge of anime. I've learned a lot watching different people podcast, and I go like, well, if it was me, I would be shooting it from this angle here, that angle there. I'd be worried about lighting. The hardest problems that I run into when I'm podcasting, let's say at a convention, is the lighting. Because I have taken some podcasts, and because the building wasn't well lit or wasn't done, it looked very dark. And I kind of like, I wish I just had the lighting there that I really needed. So I try to concentrate when I'm doing a podcast to try to make it as comfortable as possible. I had this happen. I went and I did a podcast recently at Ichiban Con, and I looked at it and I'm going like, this is awful. This is just terrible. There's no way I'm going to be putting this on YouTube. So there were some neighbors down the hallway making a lot of noise, and I'm going like, wait a minute now, I'll get them. And I'll do a podcast with them. So I got them out, got them in a lighted area, and I interviewed them, each one of them, group of young people, and I found that to be very enjoyable. Here I am trying to be like a announcer and asking them just a simple question: how did they find out about the convention? What their favorite anime was? So sometimes spontaneous things like that do work out, and then sometimes it doesn't. One thing that helps is that you know what your equipment is capable of doing and what it's not capable of doing. Can also be helpful too. When I first started podcasting, I had the problem of I wasn't quite used about time. So my podcast would end up being very short and not very complete. So I wanted to, later on, when I started watching other people's podcasts, going, well, maybe I need to speak a little longer, try to at least put in, 5 to 10 minutes of time, at least. Sometimes I have done up to 14 minutes. YouTube has a thing that first, they start you off small, and then they'll add on to your time when you're podcasting on them. And right now I have a limit of 15 minutes free time on YouTube, which I'm very grateful for them. But I have had to sometimes take a panel and cut it up in several sections in order to get that panel across. I did that with the Christianity and Anime panel that I did at Ichiban Con this year. Had to break it up to about 4 separate sections because we were covering so much material in that podcast, and people were asking about different questions about Christianity and anime, which we tried to cover, me and another member, JR, who is one of my members of my anime group. Do any of you have any questions that you would like to ask at this time?
I've never really watched a podcast, so I don't really know what it means. When I think of podcast, I think of iPod, so I don't really know what a podcast is.
Well, a podcast can be a number of things. It could be somebody pulling a stupid stunt. A podcast can be somebody sitting down and talking about a subject that they like, a point of view. It can be a lecture. It can be educational, depending upon the person's idea of what they want to, the point they want to get across. Like Brent, when he does his podcast, he has a certain anime he'll pick out. He wants to talk about that particular anime, how it's run through, how it's put together. When I do my reviews, I usually try to talk about, okay, the age limit that is appropriate for the audience, because there is a bunch of anime out there, and that is not suitable for young kids. I would not want my niece and my nephew to go and watch Gantz, because that's very mature anime. I wouldn't want my niece and nephew to go and sit down and watch Loving Hina, because they're not ready for that yet. And like I said, there are a number of them that aren't appropriate, and there are some that I would consider it. I would have no problem with my niece right now looking at Sakura Wars, the TV series, or Battle Dolls and Gel Lair. Did you know that Winston-Salem is going to have its first anime convention this year?
I heard about that at YouTube.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's going to be happening this April. Tiffany Grant, a wonderful lady, I've met her several times before, is one of the guests there, and I would highly recommend you going. I will be doing panels at that convention as well. I'm already signed up for a few. I was actually talking with the person who runs the convention, and one day chatting online, he says, well, we're going to do this convention in April. I said, would you like me to come and help? He said, sure. The funny part of it is, when I first came to Ichiban Con 1, we're talking about, this was last year, number 3, 2 was 2010. I had volunteered that first time wanting to do panels at Ichiban Con, and they got my emails, but they were kind of weary of me, didn't know who I was. So when it came time for me to go up there, I went there and said, I still would like to do a panel for you. And they said, hold on a moment. They had a guy come over, interview me a little bit, make sure that I knew my knowledge. Because the one thing you don't want to do, you don't want to have a fool coming up and doing your anime panel. So the panel that they put me on was, what unusual anime you've never seen? Well, I was supposed to have help. Time the panel came up, no help whatsoever. And so I ended up, I said, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'll just make it my own, and just whatever weird anime that I remember. And believe me, there are a lot of good weird animes out there. The Ultimate Teacher would be definitely considered a weird anime. I talked about some classic animes that people may have not heard of, like The Laughing Target that Rebecca Takahashi did. Or Mermaid Forest, Mermaid Scars, which is another Rebecca Takahashi anime. That's wonderful done. You eat mermaid flesh, you either will do 3 things. One, turn you into a monster, automatically kill you, or you become immortal for the rest of your life.
There's a little bit of a gamble.
Yeah, with mermaid flesh eating it. Sometimes mermaids are not made to be these little cutesy things. They can be terrible monsters in some Japanese anime. So that's a little bit about the Rebecca Takahashi. She's also remembered for Inuyasha, Ranma 1/2, USS Kizura, Noxious Aliens, Meidon and Koku. And I'm not saying these in proper order, please forgive me. But Rebecca is just a very talented writer. The only one that comes up to her as far as storytelling, I would have to be, say, Hayao Miyazaki. I always wanted to see this, but I guess I'll never will. I wanted to see Rumiko Takahashi write a story and Hayao Miyazaki produce it. I would pay good money.
Oh.
If Miyazaki made a Ranma movie, whoa.
Just anything that Rumiko would write, and then have Hayao Miyazaki direct it and animate it, I'd pay good money for it. I'd love to see Rumiko Takahashi and Hayao Miyazaki work together.
This is a little off topic, but have you seen Arietta yet? The
Restaurant with 72.
oh, that's what I'm talking
Like, I mean, in English, but
Oh.
like the original Japanese.
I'm behind on a lot of watching new stuff, because I've been doing the backward track, lately. I've been, watching stuff like, Pumpkin Scissors and, Leisure de Wande Daon, and, started rewatching, Loving Hina again, because I just went to, Ichiban Con and picked these up for, very good price. And so I've been kind of busy watching those. I am a bit behind. I know there's a new Last Exile series that's out, it's being played over in Japan, but I haven't yet sit down to watch any of the new Last Exile episodes. And I hear it's very good, and the animation is super. What have you been watching there? I'm kind of curious.
We tend to keep up with.
We watch what's coming. This sounds really. We watch what's coming up out in Japan like now. So right now I'm watching Persona 4 the animation, Mirai Nikki, and Nisei Monogatari.
Okay.
I'm still trying to catch up with Tiger and Bunny. So.
Okay.
Yeah, my girlfriend wants me to watch Darker Than Black, so that's next on my list.
Okay.
I've been rewatching Cardcaptor Sakura, which
You
Okay.
always rewatch Card Captors.
I always
I'm very login, but.
I like Cardcaptor Sakura, especially when it was fan sub, because that was more.
Oh yeah, the
seemed
dub
very
is
interesting.
terrible. The dub was awful.
Well, I wouldn't say the dub was awful. It's just that for some reason the
They
stuff
tried-
that was cut out of Cardcaptor Sakura is what was more interesting to me,
Yeah.
because it was a little more mature anime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You find that sometimes.
They tried to make it into like a boys action anime, and it's really not meant to be. That's what bothered me about it.
How can you make Cardcaptor Sakura into a boys action anime?
The same thing happened with Escaflowne when the show is primarily meant to be about a girl, a young high school girl, and part romance and part action adventure.
Yeah.
What they did with the English dub when it aired on Fox Kids was that they completely tried to edit out any kind of romance in the show and just try to make it a pure action adventure aimed squarely at boys.
Well, they ran into a problem in the script too when it got close to the end. What they should have done, and I agree with a friend of mine, they should have went and got the Magic Knights of Grey Earth. Now they could have edited that one down just enough to get it put on TV, but they had already, went and invested a lot of money in Sailor Moon and it didn't pay off. And that's the reason why they didn't do that. And so they ended up trying to get Visions of Escaflowne. The people said they were going to make a mistake, and they found out later on the show got canceled. The actual title of that anime is called The Visions of Escaflowne. Sorry, I didn't mean to sound like I'm being a pain in the neck. But when I try to talk about a title, especially with an anime, I try to make sure I get the correct title. So it's called The Visions of Escaflowne. And it's very good. I've also enjoyed the movie as well, even though that's a retelling and a different spin on the series. Fun things, if you like to watch different spins, watch all the different incarnations of Teaching Muro. And you go like, boy, that can really blow your mind. All the different incarnations. Like, they played that old game where you go, okay, I'm going to give you a staff. Here's all the characters now. I'm going to give it to you over here. Now you write whatever you want to, but keep those characters the same. Then we're going to pass it over to you. You get to write your version of it, and then go down to the third person right there. And you go like, great. Well, all the different versions of the vision of Tenchi Muro.
Tenchimuyo! One of my
Which Tenchi means heaven and earth. Muro means this side up.